AEW secured that bag in 2024.
Because we have just secured the bag.
But sadly, they're doing a better job filling up a bag than they are filling up an arena. All because of their first 3 years. WBD's bad investment spree might need to add AEW to its portfolio because the promotion is likely to move into smaller buildings come 2025.
I have been told that there is headway being made in running smaller buildings.
This comes after AEW press secretary Dave Meltzer advised Team Tony to do just that as AEW's popularity shrinks the more Meltzerian the promotion becomes.
My new idea on what they should do, book 2,500-seat buildings.
Of course they need to move to smaller buildings. Look around. Midlife Meltzer is trying to spin it like some innovative idea to make their shows look hot. But this is just a matter of economics. AEW cooled off. They alienated their own top stars and casual fans. And today, we're gonna get into even more shocking reasons why AEW fell off to the point where they're one step closer to creating an elite zone, like the Impact Zone. But worse, because TNA is actually putting butts in seats. Subscribe in Swahili and get you a free sticker. If AEW closed its doors today, which they won't, and shouldn't unless it's to keep Meltzer out, they've already left a legacy. They're the little engine that could, and at their peak, they sold out the United Center and packed Wembley Stadium with impressive crowds for 2 years in a row. But now that AEW is moving into smaller buildings, they're taking a dangerous step closer to irrelevance. A few more steps in that direction and Tony Khan will be applying for a partnership with WWE ID. Recent AEW ticket advances has been as high as only 2,000 and as low as just over 1,000. AEW crowds are becoming the equivalent of throwing a hot dog in a hallway, or if you're Jon Moxley, a heckler in a hallway. Jon Moxley actually looks like a bleached hot dog, so does that make him a hot dog heckled in a hallway? Or as the leader of a Nazi stable, does that just make him a Frankfurter? Anyway, AEW's ticket sales are piss poor, to the point where Moxley's character, both shoot and kayfabe, is trying to save the promotion. Jon has talked about his obsession with turning the company's fortunes around in recent interviews, calling out backstage talent who say the bottom of the card doesn't matter, and insisting that AEW needs to survive or it'll set the business back another 20 years. That quote would hold true in any era except the one where WWE is going to be on fucking Netflix. But I do get where Mox is coming from. Based on ratings, ticket sales, and moving its product from the pro wrestling suburbs to the pro wrestling projects, AEW is out here struggling. And everybody knows the Whitepool Combat Club is not the answer. Tony Khan recently bragged about AEW's culture vulture signings of black talent.
So many of the top wrestlers, some of the top black wrestlers in the world are in AEW, and I really think most of the top black wrestlers in the world are now in AEW, but I think that is a conscious thing, but I also think it's great, and it's awesome to hear that.
But because he didn't develop any of these kings and queens, Culture Vulture Khan has seen no change in his business by stockpiling black friends. Tony Khan is like Aiden Ross, a rich kid paying to hang around successful black folks with the hopes that our charisma will rub off on him and his product. It hasn't. And at the end of the day, Aiden Ross is still rocking that MAGA hat when the rappers aren't around. Kind of like Shad Khan, get it how you live. Tony Aiden Khan also admits that he does see color. I just love the two philosophies between WWE and AEW when it comes to black people in wrestling. It's either I don't see color or my best friends are black. Thank God for African NXT where nobody has to over-explain blackness ever. AEW might have some splaining to do with WBD if their buildings keep getting smaller, despite that bag getting bigger. AEW has already experimented with smaller venues. After averaging just 3,000 ticket sales, Collision did a residency in Arlington for 5 shows at the Esports Arena. The venue holds 2,500 people, and Collision only averaged 1,100 tickets sold across the 5 episodes. For those counting at home, that's less than half capacity of a venue, which is one half of half an arena. Knowing what we know about Collision, what are the sheer odds Collision rises to prominence as an A show anytime soon? Do you know how hard it is to change that perception? It took SmackDown a whole broadcast deal with Fox to finally become an A show again. AEW just signed a deal with the Broken Turner Networks and WBD, so I don't see that happening anytime soon. Despite coming out swinging, AEW is closer to NXT than it is Raw or SmackDown. African NXT has even beaten AEW most weeks since moving to the CW, and when AEW does win, it's close now. The only difference between NXT and AEW is NXT is filled with promising young stars on their way up, and AEW is filled with past their prime veterans on their way down. At this point, AEW should just change its initials to TXN because they've become NXT backwards. There's a reason CM Punk seems so excited to work with NXT talent, yet has said this about his time in AEW.
Do you have any regrets from AEW with regard to matches that didn't happen or stories that didn't get told?
Do I?
Where there's
it's such a loaded question.
So let me reframe it so it doesn't sound that way. Was there someone you didn't get to tell a story with that you would have liked to have told a story?
No. I feel like I wasted some matches on some people for sure. But that is what it is. Like, some people understand the business, some people don't.
AEW doesn't even know what it is anymore. After selling t-shirts like hotcakes in the Hot Topic era, AEW merchandise has fallen off bad. Look at this trash. AEW t-shirts used to be inventive. Now the only good merch are those Outrunner drops. AEW is booking the Costco guy, for Christ's sakes, because Tony Khan spends so much time in the comments on social media, he thinks the boom guys are mainstream. Even Fallon couldn't pretend they belonged on The Tonight Show, and Jimmy Fake laughs at everything. If there was a saving grace, AEW's venture to smaller arenas is more on brand. I don't even mean that as a bad thing. AEW is and always has been a niche product supported by a vocal, die-hard minority. Before that audience shrinks to zero, why not just put them all in a glorified barn so the product comes off hotter? If AEW is able to recapture the spirit of ECW and the 2300 arena, they might actually be onto something. The only problem is AEW's creative team is ass trash and needs to be overhauled. There's no storylines to really get excited about. None of the stories intertwine with one another. There's no connective tissue. Many of them are just rip-offs of old WWE content or skinhead movies. At this point, even homegrown MJF is just ripping off MJF. Yes, we get it. The Supersonics suck. Cheap heat. Make your ops go through a gauntlet to get a match with you on pay-per-view. Oh, wow, how creative. Yeah, okay, I get it, Max. Real life story about someone's personal life, because AEW's creative isn't really all that creative. They have to borrow from real life. I get it. AEW playing smaller venues will give them a chance to take bigger risks in front of a more intimate and hopefully forgiving crowd. The promise of loud pops across the show could create a groundswell of excitement around the product, but Tony Khan actually needs to stop booking for the surprise pop and start surprising people with good booking. He can do just that by stepping down and hiring a real booker. All Elite Wrestling has a lot of work to do if they want to make their way back into big boy buildings. Grand Slam Australia in Suncorp Stadium is already off to a slow start, and All In Texas faces a tough task of trying to sell out Globe Life Stadium in Arlington, Texas, where they couldn't even sell 1,200 tickets for Collision. If they're not careful, this entire promotion is going to have to pull a WrestleMania 7, to where now they're moving their pay-per-views to smaller venues. At that point, Tony Khan will probably blame bomb threats from Russia. When will AEW return to bigger buildings? Did you get your free sticker yet? Tell me in the comments!